welcome everyone to Drumm's Hockey Podcast. Well, this is the title of our podcast for now, unless we come up with like a better name. So yeah, this is episode 2. Got my co-host Leira. We're back at it again. We are waiting on another person. Hopefully they will be joining us momentarily or soon. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the episode. So, news around the NHL. Today, we have heard from the Toronto Maple Leafs captain, John Tavares, is out 3 weeks with an oblique injury.
What is an oblique?
What's an oblique?
Well, no, what's an oblique injury? How do you
Oblique? Well, if I remember my anatomy, I think your oblique is like kind of like the side of your core. So he could have like probably like stretched it or did like a hyperextension, I'm guessing. And it's sore. And when your core is sore, it's like you don't even want to move. But
trust me. That's no joke. That hurts.
yeah, so that's for the next 3 weeks, you know, so he's gonna miss the opening game. Probably first week of the season, but he should be back in action probably mid-October. So
yeah, probably gonna miss at least the first 4 games of the Leafs, I think, in the regular season. That's 3 weeks, right?
Yes, 3 weeks for John Tavares. We also I got a news earlier in the week about Brock Besser. I don't know how many weeks he's missing. Actually,
3 to 4 weeks. Actually,
yeah. So
like he had surgery for a hand injury.
So that sucks. Let's see how it's gonna affect his game in the coming days, you know what I mean? And he's gonna be an important piece for that Canucks team because a lot of people, you know, they're writing that this Canucks team is going to be making the postseason or some kind of noise in the Pacific Division.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, top 6 forward. He's a sniper on their team, so hoping it's not anything too serious. And speaking of the Vegas meme nights, we have Laurent Brossoit who is out. Yeah. So now you have Robin Lehner and Laurent Brossoit out. I don't know how much time Brossoit is missing. I'm gonna imagine not too long because they're gonna be like in like panic mode right now.
They'd definitely be in crisis mode if it was a long-term injury right now. But it doesn't seem like they are. So hopefully it's just a couple of weeks at most. I don't see any actual details on this injury. It just says that he will not be at training camp because of a hip surgery. Looks like.
Yeah, so he's gonna be out 2 to 3 months.
Yeah,
probably.
Aiden Hill and Logan Thompson holding down the fort until he comes back. Speedy recovery to all these guys, never. But you know, especially Vancouver, I think Ilya Mikheyev is actually also listed as day to day. I think he might have suffered a injury in one of the preseason games. I don't really
I believe Vancouver's opening preseason game to Calgary, he sustained an upper body injury, if I remember.
Yeah, something like that.
So it sucks, you know. Mikheyev, pretty good in Toronto, but he's also dealt his fair share of injuries. So yeah, you know, hoping all these guys aren't like long term, but you know, we'll wait and see. I mean, when I think of injuries right now that's gonna plague a team, it's the Boston Bruins, dude. I look at the Boston Bruins right now, and they have 3 main guys on their roster injured for quite some time. So we have Matt Grzelcyk, who's going to be out till early November with his shoulder injury. We're gonna have Charlie McAvoy out who had shoulder surgery over the off season. He's going to be back in early December. And Brad Marchand is going to be out till early December with a hip
Dang.
injury. And I think he also had a surgery too for that. So
I was wondering.
so you're going to have basically Bergeron, Pasternak, and who knows, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at their projected lineup right now. I was wondering why Brad Marchand and McAvoy were in the lineup. So their projected lineup right now is first line of Pavel Zacha, Patrice Bergeron, Jake DeBrusk. Second line, Taylor Hall, Krejci, and David Pasternak. Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Craig Smith, Jack Stibnica, Thomas Nosek, and Nick Foligno is their forward lineup. So I definitely think that in October, November, they're gonna feel those losses, especially that those two defensemen, Grizzlick and McAvoy. You don't want to lose, even one of them, let alone both of them, at the same time, long term. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they deal with this. It is the Boston Bruins. I've no better than to bet against the Boston Bruins, but those are not good injuries to have, especially
Yes.
to your core players.
Speaking of injuries that I am just finding out right now, that was
Mm-hmm.
announced yesterday, Gabriel Landeskog is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Just what the defending Stanley Cup champions needed is to lose their captain.
And you never want to hear the word indefinitely when you have an
Yeah, and it's lower body injuries, so was it a knee on knee? These are the things about preseason that I don't like, and I don't like that they have 6 to 8 games of preseason. Minute to 4 because
yeah.
you're gonna have injuries like this that can be totally avoidable. And this affects NHL marketing and their dollars that they make.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see who else is out. Kaprizov is away for personal reasons, but I think he's back playing with the Wild. I saw him playing a preseason game and getting a goal. Montreal with a bunch of injuries. I'm trying to see if there's any one. Ryan Ellis out for the season for the Philadelphia Flyers.
Ryan Ellis
Ryan Ellis and Sean
out for the
Couturier.
season.
Sean
Oh, you hate
Couturier,
to see it.
he's actually right now considered out for the season. Sean Couturier, so those are two big guys on decent contracts, like expensive contracts that they're going to be out. So the Flyers, if you're John Tortorella, what do you do? I tell
See,
you,
I was gonna say, in our last podcast, I had the Flyers number one in the Connor Bedard stakes. I think finding out about these two injuries just further cements that. The thing with John Tortorella though is he's not really the type to tank. He seems to be a coach who always wants to get wins. So it's gonna be interesting to see what the Flyers do. I just don't see a scenario where good old Torts is gonna settle for a tank season. You know what I mean?
yes,
So I don't think they're gonna do well, even with Torts behind the bench.
yeah. We also see I see I don't know if this happened in the off season. I knew about Nick Backstrom, and Nick Backstrom had like a hip surgery that kind of questioned his career, like if he's going to continue playing. As far
Mm-hmm.
as I know, he'll be back playing with the Capitals again, so that's good to hear. And then Tom Wilson's going to be out till mid-December with a knee injury, so not going to hear anything about Tom Wilson
So
till the sounds like by Christmas time if he gets back to playing. So that kind of I knew we were gonna go about like the news, but like yeah, I guess it's kind of good to talk about the injuries because you know what, early on in the season, points matter. because
Oh
it
yeah,
might seem like it doesn't matter, and actually, uh, it's going to transition into one of our topics later on. But you know, the more points you get in the early part of the season, the less you have to worry about the playoff push. You know what I mean? Which can be good for some
yeah.
teams, and for others not so good. So really, it's gonna. Some of these teams are really going to feel the effects of losing these players. I think Boston is the number one team in my mind. You know,
Hmm.
you're missing two
Oh yeah,
superstars out of your lineup, and you're in a very competitive Atlantic division. You know, if Ottawa and Detroit get the go ahead on points
hmm.
until like what when did they say that the playoff like line is about like American Thanksgiving kind of has an idea of who's going to probably be in the playoffs or not. I think it's
Like
around then.
figuring out who the early favorites are and all that stuff. I think it's
Yeah,
around, yeah, because that's late November. So
yeah. So you kind of
it's
get
enough
a
time to get a good look. Yeah.
yeah. So if Ottawa and Detroit like this is why I'm saying like Boston is not necessarily like a playoff lock like they should be. They should be a wild card, but they're
Hmm.
definitely not. And I think the Metro is gonna have 5 teams, in my opinion. I think Ottawa is going to fight for that spot, but I
I
don't
think
know.
it's gonna be a dogfight for the Atlantic wild card between Boston, Ottawa, and Detroit. More so Boston and Ottawa, but I think Detroit can also be there to compete. But I think Boston and Philadelphia are definitely going to feel those losses early in the season. Especially Philadelphia, they don't really have much going for them right now. They just lost two of their best players long term, so I think they are royally screwed this year. I'd say.
Yeah, I think if you're a Flyers fan, your best hope is that you win that lottery pick for Bedard,
Oh yeah,
and it's gonna change the franchise around. But you know, those things aren't always guarantee. Um,
oh yeah.
but yeah, you know what? Speaking of this, like these teams potentially reaching the playoffs, it's important to note and transition into who's going to have a fantastic season with their team to help them get to that playoff push. So, like who do you think in the NHL right now had like maybe a mediocre season last year and is ready for a bounce back season this year? Or who do you think is going to have an outbreak season? Someone that we're not expecting at all.
Kind of like a breakout year, huh?
Yeah.
Mm, uh, a name that has been on my mind for a while because I've seen this man play on the Islanders, the Oilers. He's currently playing for the Seattle Kraken. I think we're gonna see not a breakout year, but like you said, an uprate in production from Mister. Wait, is he not on the Kraken anymore? Or he is in the Kraken? Yeah, Jordan Eberle. I think we're gonna see a. I think he's gonna reach 30 goals this year.
Hmm.
And my reasoning is the Seattle Kraken don't really have a pure goal scorer on their team, and I feel like if anyone was to step up on that team, it'd be a guy like Eberle who's been in the league for a while. He knows kind of what it takes to win in this league, and he's been on successful teams before. He was on both Islanders squads that made the Eastern Conference Finals in 2020 and 2021. And I don't know if you watched a lot of that series, but Eberle was a big factor in why they reached as far as they did. On the same side, I think reigning Cup champion Andrei Burakovsky, he really had a up year last year. I mean, 61 points, 22 goals, and 39 assists in the regular season. I think that's a career high for him in points.
Yeah.
So I think I see no reason for him to slow down, especially now that he is on a Kraken team where he has a little bit more leeway and probably going to get more ice time on this team. Um, he was on a star-studded Colorado team, right? So I feel like with more, I don't want to say priority, but with more playtime, Andre Burakovsky is going to be matching, if not beating, his career totals from last year. As far as defensemen go, I mean, Kale McCarr is probably going to retain his form. Something tells me that we're going to see a little bit of a dip in Roman Yossi's performance, just because he had a career year last year, but he's not exactly at that age where he can just keep going up. You know what I mean, I feel like we might have seen the peak of that man last year. Not saying that he's gonna be he's gonna fall off as hard as let's say like a Mark Edward Classic where he just fell off a cliff. I think we're gonna see a bit of a decline in terms of uprating their year. I really don't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I haven't caught up with much young defensemen in the league, especially with all the noise that the rookies made last year. Apart from Kale McCarr, I don't see really any of these young ones completely like just having this breakout year. But hey, this is why we watch the league, right? It's
Yeah.
always the guy you least expect.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm looking.
I actually have three guys that I think are gonna have breakout years. So one, a
Mhm.
guy who had a breakout year last year and really made noise in this league and is a Stanley Cup champion, Nazem Kadri, who's now Calgary Flame.
Yeah.
After what Calgary did to get this man onto this team, I think Nazem is going to have, and this is no pun intended, a fire lit under his ass to be like, look, this wasn't a fluke. You know what I mean? Like I'm legit and I'm here to be a pest. I'm here to get some amazing highlight reel goals. I'm here
Make an impact.
to match my season best. Like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Nazem Kadri in the playoffs, especially in the Stanley Cup final, like, man, that guy had some balls on him, especially with that OT winner in game 4 against the Lightning. So there's no reason for me to doubt that Nazem Kadri is going to put up some numbers this year in Calgary. So if you're a Flames fan, be excited. You know what I mean? Nazem, when he played in Toronto, like the guy was just a beauty. But unfortunately, with like how like player depth went in Toronto, like especially the last 5 years, he was never going to be in our top 6. He was always going to be a middle 6 guy for us, and that was too bad. I loved Nazem, you know what I mean? And I was
Yeah.
glad to see him win his cup last year. Another guy that I'm thinking of, and you know what? It's a contract year coming up for him for next
Mm.
season. And RFA, New York Ranger Alexis Lafreniere, number 1 overall pick, a
Oh, good
couple
choice.
years ago, and we haven't really seen him like rise to the occasion like a lot of us thought he was going to when he joined the Rangers.
Mhm.
Especially when you watched his World Juniors a couple years ago, and he was dynamic. That guy, you know what I mean?
Oh
I
yeah.
think he's really going to be like, look, I might not be on the first line, but I'm gonna help this Rangers team like put up some big numbers in point productions. And I can see the Rangers being like top 3 in scoring this year and in goal differential too. They were pretty good last year in goal differential. I think this year they are top 3 in the league. So watch for him. And then there was one more guy I was thinking of. It kind of slipped my mind now. Uh Whatever. If I think about it, we'll come back to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those are two guys that like off the top of my head, Ray Nazem and Alexis. I
Actually,
Alexia, yeah, like those guys are gonna put up huge numbers. Oh, I know the guy. The Calder winner last year, Maurice Sider, and you were talking about young defensemen. Uh,
yeah.
this guy is looking like freaking Nick Lidstrom like on this Detroit team. Like, and I
That is
think
high praise.
you know what I mean. Like, I really didn't get to watch Detroit too much, but when I did, I really heard a lot of good things about Maurice Sider, and you know, Red Wings fans, he's gonna be your future captain. There's no doubt in my mind. Like, as much as Larkin is liked probably in that franchise, I don't think Larkin's gonna be there for their cup runs in the future. I think Larkin's gonna be traded so they can make that team better. And mark my words, they're gonna trade Dylan Larkin to get better players in return.
Oh yeah.
Because Steve Eiserman, he's a genius. So yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at his season last year, his Calder winning season. He was not the top rookie like point leaders. He was
Mm-hmm.
close, but he had 7 goals and 43 assists for 50 points in his
Oh yeah.
rookie year. 50 points as a defenseman in your rookie year in the Detroit Red Wings.
Also played
The
all 82 games. All 82 games.
the guy is going to score between 70 and 80 points this year. Detroit got way better. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like he's gonna have a monster year. And I guarantee you a lot of people aren't gonna put him in a Norris Trophy conversation, but he's gonna be sniffing around that conversation with Hedman and Yossi and Makar and Hughes. Like, he is legit. If 50 points as a defenseman in your rookie year doesn't tell you anything, this is what all you need to know about him. And this is why you won the Calder, because 50 points compared to what Michael Bunting got, which was close to 70 points with that Matthews line.
Yeah,
There's
but he was on the
there's
Matthews line.
yeah, right, because he has players. Bunting had players that supported him in that role, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Bunting is great in that role. But I think Maurice Sider, he's a number one defenseman on any team, and he's only going to get better in his career. So that's a guy on the lookout. And if you're into fantasy hockey, I'd probably pick him. To be honest, like you guys are gonna wait and see, but I'm telling you, Maurice Sider is gonna have a monster year in with the Red Wings.
I have to completely agree, actually, and I also want to add one more name to my list. And I'm gonna admit I'm a little bit biased, but William Eklund, Ben. Um, I watched this guy play the first few games of the regular season last year, and a lot of people were criticizing. You know, he's really young. Is he NHL ready? He looks NHL ready, and it might not show in his stats because he had to go back to, I believe it was Sweden. But he knows his stuff, man. Like this guy was making plays. In terms of like statistics wise, he's probably not going to be up there for for points or goals or anything. But in terms of making an impact, Sharks fans, fellow Sharks fans, keep an eye out for this Eklund kid, man, because he's one of the few bright spots we have right now. But definitely agree with everything you said about Snyder. A lot of people actually last year, even though he was just a rookie, in the early discussions of the Norris Trophy, his name was getting floated around already, and that's a testament to how good this guy is, given that it was his first year. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate the fact that he played all 82 games last year. There's not a lot of rookies who can say they did that.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
a
tough
lot.
it's a tough league to play all 82. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
see,
it's
some vets can't even do it.
yeah, it's tough. And in terms of like bounce back this season, there's no doubt in my mind that Mark Scheifele is going to have a bounce back season. Listen, Jets fans, and I said this last episode, I'm going to say it again. Stop trying to trade this guy. This guy literally was your first selected pick for the Jets 2.0. And you want to get rid of him because he had one bum season? Uh, Let's let's go take a look. I'm going to search up Shifley right now,
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell you his career points with the Jets. Okay? So 2011, 2012. He played 7 games with the Jets, 1 goal, 1 point. Okay, right? Like, you're not going to expect anything in his like early days as a Jet. 12, 13, played 4 games, 0 points. Didn't really add anything. He was just kind of there to get some games under his belt. His first main season, 13, 14, 13 goals, 21 points, 34 points in 63 games. Okay, he's not quite where his ceiling is high. That's what people are saying. Like, he's going to have a high ceiling. And then over the next 3 years, he goes from 49 points in 14-15, 61 points in 15-16 to 82 points. That's a point a game. Do you know how hard that is in the NHL to get a point a game? Not a lot of guys can do it. And he was pretty consistent in getting 82 points. So let's see. 16-17, 79 games played, 82 points. 17-18, 60 games played, 60 points. 18-19, 82 games played, 84 points. 19-20, 71 games played, 73 points. Okay? And now the past 2 seasons, no, even 2021, 56 games played, 63 points. And even last year, he played 67 games for the Winnipeg Jets. Yes, was his plus minus bad? Of course. But he had 70 points.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, Mark Scheifele, he's going to play more games. And this is where people are going to notice that he's useful when he plays more games. Now, was he a defensive liability? Yes. Is Rick Bowness going to hopefully clean that part of his game up? Yes. Are the Jets a mess as much as we think they are? Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so. A lot of the players are saying they're a tight-knit group, right?
Yeah.
So you have to take that for what it is from them. If they're a tight-knit group and they just had a bad season, I think they want to forget about last season and move on to this one. You know what I mean? And Mark Scheifele is not a guy that you should be blaming when he's over a point a game for the past, like, almost 7 to 8 seasons now. This guy is a superstar on your team and you want to trade him? Like Jets fans, like, listen, I'm on your side. I love the Jets. But you guys gotta stop being delusional. Like, you want to trade Mark Scheifele for what? Who are you gonna get? Who's gonna replace Mark Scheifele as your number 1 center? You're Luke Dubois?
One's gonna take it for what he's worth.
You're Luke Dubois? He's out the door going to Montreal, signing 8 years with him next year. I bet you. So what do? You know what I mean? You do not trade Mark Scheifele. You leave him alone. Because honestly, if you look at that power play that they have, that power play should be top 5 in the league. Like, are you kidding me? Mark Scheifele in the middle? Have you, like, if you really watch the details of their power play when they were like really good, Mark Scheifele is a big reason that power play was good. He would literally be in the box, right? Like, the guys are boxing him in, and somehow he would get the passes from Wheeler or like Laine when Laine used to play. And Scheifele is just like tap, 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 getting all these goals for no reason. Like, he shouldn't have even been scoring all these goals, but he's like, you know what I mean? So in terms of bounce back, Mark Scheifele has my confidence vote on that. And this isn't even me dick riding him, by the way. To most people are thinking I'm gonna be dick riding Mark Scheifele. I'm not. But you look at literally what the statistics say and tell me I'm wrong. Right? So
I actually have it open right now. He has been a literal point per game player since the 2016 2017 season. And I feel like a lot of the hate for Mark Scheifele really got amplified after the Winnipeg Montreal series, where he unfortunately ran over Jake Evans. Ever since then, I noticed that a lot of people have just looked at him as just this bum. He's just a dirty player. But I watch the Jets a lot because my mother is a big Winnipeg Jets fan. And she's the one who planted this in my head, where she said, I don't get all the hate that Shifley is getting because he's still the same player that he was in that Western Conference final run. He still is able to make these plays. And you actually touched on this earlier. He gets hounded every time he's in the offensive zone, and that hasn't changed at all. And despite him being hounded, he's able to make these plays. He's able to make these passes. He's gonna find the guy driving to the net. And if we trade this guy, if the Jets trade this guy, I don't think people realize how much of an impact is gonna be lost
Oh,
when Shifley
it'll
is
be
gone.
it'll be a detriment to them. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
know
major.
I know Cole Perfetti, right? He's on the up and ups with the team too. But
He's not there
the
yet.
guy is going to be playing left wing. He ain't playing center. He's not ready for that in the NHL yet. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And if you're going to rush Perfetti's like development on that team, you're going to ruin him. And then what do you have to look forward to? No one. So Jets fans just need to take a break. I understand that it's been stressful. Yeah, you swept Edmonton in that series. Not last year, but in 2021, you swept
2021, yeah.
Edmonton. Really impressive. You know what I mean? All those games went to overtime, and it could have went either way. Hold on, I'll try
I think
and.
yeah, just to expand on that really quick too. I feel like the Jets fans, ever since that 2018 run to the Western Final, they've just had this expectation of where the team should be and how they should perform every year. And that's normal for every hockey fan to have. But I feel like we shouldn't be, or they shouldn't be panicking this way where, like, oh my God, he's a liability now, trade him. I don't see it that way. I feel like we already did that when we traded Patrick Laine away. Um, that being said, I really don't agree with Shifley being traded. I feel like if in terms of bounce back, I think he's gonna do it this year. And when you coach coming in, it might be the refresher that he needs. You
Yeah.
gotta remember, Rick Bowness is coming in this week, and he has a totally different approach than Paul Maurice and David Larry.
Oh, of course.
I think
And you're going to see that within their systems and within their play. I think they're going to be one of those like you know what I mean? They might play the trap a little more. They might be a little more defensive, but like sometimes that's what hockey is about. Sometimes you just got to, box your opponents in and make them pay with that one mistake. And the Jets have offense. And
oh yeah,
just to remind everyone that Mark Scheifele in 33 playoff games has 18 goals, 13 assists, and 31 points. So he's a playoff performer. Okay. And that
oh yeah.
2018 run, 14 goals, 6 assists, 20 points. He was literally on the verge of winning the Conn Smythe if the Jets had gone all the way. So take that for what that is.
Really quickly, I just want to address that Mr. JMWacky is here with us now. I think he's just
Hello.
getting his stuff. Oh, there he is.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome to the
Hello.
podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, JM is one of the three people, Drumm and I being the other two, who consistently talk about hockey in our city, and it's good to have you on here, man. We can finally talk about our little hockey conversation on a good
That is good.
platform.
Yeah, this I agree. I agree.
Yeah, so just to catch you up on what we've been talking about, we are currently discussing which players are gonna have a bounce back year for this upcoming regular season. There's been a couple of players mentioned. Mark Scheifele is currently the one we're talking about. Do you have any thoughts that maybe you want to add, or do you have any players that
Um,
you think are gonna bounce back?
I mean, if we're talking about the Jets, in my honest opinion, ever since left the team, no one was able to quarterback the play, even even not during the power play. Because
Mhm.
when Bufflin left, everybody was just lost. Like as you can see after 2018 when Bufflin was like wasn't sure about staying in the team, Mark Scheifele and Wheeler lost their points. They lost their motivation. Their points got really low. We're looking at if you looked at Instagram's top players in assists before. Before the Jets did the 2018-2017 run, the year before that, Wheeler was top in assists.
Yeah.
So if they're able to find their games again, and then probably be able to discover it again, that'll be great. I mean, in my honest opinion, Wheeler might be a bit slower, but I can see flashes of him going back to when he was still a star player, even if he was a bit slow.
I think that's fair. I think Blake Wheeler is a good candidate for a bounce back season. Wouldn't you agree, Drum?
Yeah, I mean, of course, age is always a thing, and you're gonna have younger guys, and the league is faster. But like Blake Wheeler, even through his age and in his 30s, he's put up some really impressive numbers on the Jets' first line with Shifley and Connor. You know what I mean? And I think a bright spot on that Jets team it is going to be Kyle Connor and Cole Perfetti, and it looks like Wheeler is going to be starting the season on the second line with Dubois and Perfetti possibly. So it'll be good for Wheeler, who's the older guy, to mentor both Dubois and Perfetti, right? And those guys, their offensive game looks really good. So Wheeler's going to be able to help complement that, I believe, in my opinion. So moving on to the next conversation, I have this question, and I've kind of thought about it a little bit because as a Maple Leafs fan, we get kind of chirped about this all the time. Oh, you guys are so good in the regular season, right? And in my mind, I'm like, well, how important is the regular season for like most teams? Like, I'm thinking the top teams in the NHL, but for most teams in general, you know what I mean? And I can kind of start off this conversation by saying I think the regular season is not a waste of time like most people think. Most people, you know why people want playoff hockey? Because it's the most exciting hockey there is.
Mm-hmm.
Is anyone going to disagree with that? You know what I mean?
No.
But I think in terms of how a team meshes together over 82 game grind, that is what makes me believe that it's important. If you just jump straight into the Stanley Cup playoffs and be like, oh, these are the best teams, like go at it, you're gonna get some really open, sloppy hockey, and it's gonna be a mess. And it's not great to watch that kind of hockey. I like, the 0-0 games that go into triple OT because there's just like anticipation, like waiting, like who's gonna score that goal, right?
Yeah.
And in the regular season, is it all about getting your stats up? In some manners, yes. Like if you're Austin Matthews, you think him hitting 60 goals didn't give him motivation in the playoffs to do good? Like you could totally see Matthews was dialed in the playoffs this year, unlike other years. Like, and this is just as a Leafs fan, you know what I mean? And I bet you guys could probably attest to this with other players on other teams that have had great regular seasons, and they translated that into the playoffs as well. So, what do you guys think?
JM, you want to take this one first? I'll take the last.
I mean, if talking about first off it came into my mind was Arthur Lekkonen. That guy is never a career player in the he was never talked about in regular season, not at all, until
Mhm.
the last when he was still in Montreal and especially at
And
Colorado.
yeah,
If we looked at um our hockey or at Twitter, you see them
Mhm.
praising R3 Lekkonen, the star. People are even joking about how it's practically Lekkonen who carried the team to the Stanley
yeah,
Cup playoffs. Because if you
clutch
think
player.
about it, yeah, like it's you never expect who's gonna step it up in the playoffs because that's what I like about the playoffs too. You never know who's gonna step up, who's gonna be practically invincible. Like for Kale Markar, I'm a huge fan of defensemen. I got into hockey. I started reading over defensemen, and like good thing we have like Kale Markar, and more a huge fan of Moritz Seider too, because if he's able to connect that, and the Detroit Red Wings are able to grow him up, oh man, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be like the '90s Avalanche and the Red Wings all over again. That would be great.
Oh, and we could actually get into that later. But to expand on JM's point there, he brought up the point about how our players like Arturi Lehkonen are pretty much ghosts in the regular season, right? Nobody really talks about them, but in the playoffs, they become these like playoff heroes. And another player that comes to mind, if you guys remember from a couple of years back, Justin Williams, he was one of those players as well, where in the regular season you won't really hear much about him, but come playoff time, especially come Game 7, you'll always hear, "Oh, Mr. Game 7, Justin Williams, he's clutch. If he's on your team, you're pretty much favored to win." So to answer your question, Drum, if the importance of the regular season, I think it's very important that we keep the current format of the regular season up because 82 games, on paper it sounds like a long time and it sounds like it's too much, but I think it's the perfect time. You look at the NBA, and in the NBA, I think we can all agree here that parity is a lot less evident in the NBA than it is in the NHL. And you touched on earlier, Drum, about these teams having regular season success translating to playoff success. You look at the NBA, 82 games, you have teams like the Warriors. All year, you know that they're the best team.
Yeah.
And then come playoff time, they prove it. In hockey, the only teams who have ever done that, in my honest opinion, have been the last two iterations of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I think the early iterations of Detroit in the early 2000s. And my point is, you need the regular season to see if whatever roster you have works. And the biggest example of this is 2018's Nashville. They won the President's Trophy, and everyone thought that they were going to walk to the finals. And then they ran into the Winnipeg Jets. And the reason why I say that the regular season is important, you always get these teams in the offseason where they sign all these free agents, they make all these big trades, and now you end up with these super team almost like rosters. And then they end up just being a wild card team who gets swept in the first round, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like the regular season is important, and I think we should keep the format because it's a really good way to see if the roster is gonna work. Because, like you said earlier, Drum, if we just went straight to the playoffs with like all these stacked teams without seeing how they do in the regular season, we would have a lot of really wacky fucking like really wacky like playoff series where you'd get teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning of 2021 playing against the like Dallas of 2021 where they weren't that good.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see playoff series like that where it's going to be lopsided. Does it make for great TV and upset opportunities? Yes, but that's not what you want to do when you want to profit off a league. And with a regular season, it gives you a lot more, I guess, TV time for all your star players. Because let's be honest, it's not like the NBA where there's only like 10 to 15 star players. Almost every team in the NHL has, if not a star player, an elite like player where they can say, "Hey, you play for the Ducks. You must be a Trevor Zegras fan."
Yeah.
Or like you like the Sharks. You must be an Eric Carlson fan. You know what I mean? Every team has a name that is the face of their team. And I think with the 82 games, you give it enough time to market these teams, to market to these cities. And I feel like if you take away the regular season, you not only take a lot of entertainment away, but you take a lot of profit away from the league. So I think the regular season is absolutely important, especially for a top team. If you're a projected top team right now in the off season, and you go straight into the playoffs and you get swept, dude, you're done. Like you got to blow that roster up in my opinion. So regular season definitely needed, especially for top teams, so they can get the chemistry going, see what system fits well with each roster, with each line. Absolutely, I am a regular season athlete.
See, but that's also interesting that you say that, because then that makes like that last part that you just said, if you're a projected top team and you get swept in the first round, right? Now I'm thinking about this Tampa Bay Lightning team
Yes.
that absolutely just wiped the floor in the regular season and were ghosts against that Columbus Blue Jackets team. And I think it is the President's Trophy. Like the people say it's a curse, and I think that's just like one of those things, like that you got to take with a grain of salt. But do teams really get in their own heads when they are at the very top of the league in the standings, and they're like, "We're going into this playoffs, and it's basically clean slate." You know what I mean? Like, I think that's an interesting thing to think about too. Do teams that do really well in the regular season, that win like 50 games, 60 games, do they get in their own heads? Your thoughts?
I think so. Especially that Tampa team that got swept. I absolutely believe that they got in their own heads. Yeah, go on, Jim.
Yeah, no, in my opinion, it practically got in their own hands. Like, I know that I'm not gonna shit on like hockey tradition, hockey. What do you call those superstitions? But it just literally got into their own heads because they practically were about to beat the Blue Jackets that time. But then I think that just one goal was just practically just deflated the whole series, which did not make sense because it just didn't make sense because Kucher was still there. He wasn't even injured yet. Braden Point was still there too. Everybody, like the whole team, that like in my honest opinion, that was like one of the strongest Tampa Bay team ever. Besides the first time they won it, because everybody was there. Let's say, oh boy, let me just search it up.
Definitely one of the
Andrej,
best teams.
Andrej Palat. Who else? Andrej Palat. Good lord, a bunch of good players they had to trade away, but
they had their core. Like, they had their core. Basically.
Yeah, they had that core that time, and then that core was pretty good because they got like top two lines that were able to score really good, and then there's Killorn, who's literally a guy who can just practically lock you down. The defense owner is really good, like we had Sergachev, yeah. We also have Hedman. Shoot. Yeah, like if they just didn't just get that into their head, they would have done really great there.
I think it was the pressure of being one of the best teams in the history of the game. I think that's what got to them there, and lack of adjustment from John Cooper that year. It goes back to what you were saying though, Drumm. These teams that are like super stacked, I do feel like they do get in their own heads with that, especially all year people were talking about that Tampa team that year, like, oh my god, 63 wins, no other team has ever done that before. I feel like as a player, if you're a player on that team, you're going into the playoffs, you're going up against this Columbus squad who's like, let's be honest, that regular season they had a mediocre year with the lineup that they had. I mean, they had Panarin, and I think they didn't have Nyquist yet, but they had Panarin and a bunch of other guys in the Columbus Jackets team.
I think it was Duchesne.
Duchesne was on that team.
Yeah, Duchesne was there too.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that the pressure of being the best made them definitely trip them up that year, and lack of adjustment again from the coach. And it goes back to the regular season thing. You play 82 games. You have a solid 1 or 2 game plans for the regular season. Once you figure out that your team has chemistry and they can play together and mesh well together, part of the reason why regular season is important is because you figure out what works. Now, come playoff time, you now have to take all of those things that work and try to make a completely new strategy for the playoffs. And 2019 Tampa Bay proved that needs to happen because they played like regular season in that series and they got smoked. And I mean, those games were not close except maybe game one.
Yeah, game one I
Like-
would say was the closest of that series in my honest opinion, and then
Yeah,
they just really didn't have an answer, which was kind of surprising. And then you watch the next two playoff runs that they went on after that to win the back-to-back championships.
Yeah.
And John Cooper was probably one of the biggest parts of that Stanley Cup run. As much as the players were, and the players were fantastic, and the goaltending was fantastic, John Cooper, you know, after people wanted his head after that series, he made the proper adjustments. And I think that is what takes a team from, you know, like what Toronto is, where they choke in the first round, like what Washington used to be when they choked in the second round. When they make those
Absolutely.
adjustments as a team, not just the players, not just the goaltending, but even the coaching staff, and it all works together, that's where you're gonna get your runs. You know what I mean? Like, and Tampa Bay, I think historically, especially those 2 years that they won and the year that they lost, you're gonna look at how their regular seasons were and what the changes that they had to make in those playoff runs that led them to success. Now, speaking of playoffs, Leira and I, we kind of discussed over some Twitter DMs some of the best playoff series that we've ever seen. So I'm gonna let Leira actually take it away.
All right. So I think my favorite playoff series. A lot of you might think it's the 2019 Vegas one of San Jose, but it's actually, and we're gonna touch on this later on too. But it was actually 2008, San Jose versus the Dallas Stars, and that it's not a series that a lot of people look at and go, "Holy crap!" You know, back and forth, elite. That series made me fall in love with the Sharks because they were the second seed that year, and they had just come off a 7-game war against the Calgary Flames, and no one expected Dallas to be as good as they were that year. I believe Dallas was either fourth or fifth seed that year, and this was the days of Marty Turco, the legend in net. The reason why I love the series so much, and the reason why it made me a Sharks fan, Game 6, just Game 6 of that series. And for those of you out of the loop who don't know what happened, Game 6 went to 4 overtimes that year. I believe the score was 1-1. That game almost ended in the first overtime or the second overtime. I don't quite remember. Mr. Evgeny Nabokov, which I still believe is the best save ever. Post to post, absolutely robbing Brendan Morrow. And if you guys don't know, I'll send the clip over on my Twitter later of the save that I'm talking about. And the reason why I have it on my best playoff series ever is because that was the playoff series that made me fall in love with it. Because I only came to Canada in 2007, so I actually had no idea what hockey was prior to that. And when I first got here, my first team was the Edmonton Oilers. But for those of you who are aware, after 2006, the Edmonton Oilers were basically basement dwellers for a long time. So I watched the playoffs that year with no dog in the room, absolutely unbiased. I watched that game, Game 6, and I go, "Oh my God, this team, they provide playoff moments." Now, for an unbiased opinion, best playoff series. Oh man, of all time, I think you can pick any of the Detroit and Colorado series.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to
You
that.
want to talk about war? Oh my goodness!
Man,
like,
those are some brutal series, both
we
teams.
got a glimpse of it whenever the Sharks and the Golden Knights played because they hate each other, but they don't even come close to the hatred of Detroit, Colorado. I mean, people lost games off of their careers because of the injuries they suffered in the series. Never forget Claude Lemieux and I forget who he ran over. I believe it was Chris Draper. just
Yeah.
absolutely running him over on the bench. And I watched highlights of these series shortly after the Sharks got eliminated in the 08. I'm like, this is my new favorite sport because of that series. And I think a lot of people will agree with me when they say that any Colorado Detroit series between 1996 and 2002 was just, in what the modern kids would say, an absolute banger every single time. Every single time.
What?
And I will
Yeah.
die on this hill. So that's my pick, Colorado and Detroit, any year that they met.
Yeah. I was gonna
about
say
you?
though, is that Sharks and Vegas series still like your top 3?
2019, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Because, I love a good comeback, but I love a comeback against a rival. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Drumm knows. But after 2019 Sharks in Vegas, I was the most obnoxious person in the city. I have a T-shirt that has the score of the third period of Game 7 on the front as 3-0. At the back has the final score of San Jose 5 and Vegas 4. And I wear that almost everywhere I go. And I've got a lot of reactions, even within the city. There's a lot of Vegas fans in the city. I'm a little surprised. And every
Yeah,
time,
just putting on that, which is really weird. Like first time they came off, I got a bunch of people already having caps. Like they haven't even inaugurated yet, but I saw a bunch of people wearing the caps. Are talking about it that they're gonna be a really good team, which is really weird because you know how Winnipeg is so far away from Vegas.
yeah.
But anyways,
But,
go ahead, continue on.
yeah, I mean, definitely, like, to answer your question, Drum, that's in my top 3 for sure.
Yeah.
Until the Sharks win the cup, that's never leaving my list, man.
I think you know what? I think it's always gonna be in your list because not only like what a comeback that was, but like there was emotion in that game 7. You know, there was some blood shed and some tears wept. That's all I'm gonna say.
That
But
is the stuff of script, let me tell you.
it is. Uh, yeah. What about you, Jam? What do you think? Like in your personal opinion, like what's your
Oh,
best playoff series ever
oh
that
boy.
you've watched or that you know of?
I've watched. All right, so to top off, guys, I'm practically new to hockey. I got into hockey 2018 because of the
Mhm.
Winnipeg Jets run. But in my honest opinion, as a Jets fan, I would say 2018 Nashville series. Oh boy,
Mm,
that was super good. Like
that was really
it was like a West Conference final. Like I'm not gonna lie, especially the game where we had that huge comeback at Winnipeg. Oh boy,
good. I think that
the
was
city
game
was just
4.
buzzing. Yeah, I think
Game
it was game 4. Yeah,
3. Game
everybody.
3. That was game 3. That's game 3.
Yeah, game 3. Everybody was just buzzing because
I lost.
we everybody was so deflated. I think it was 3-0, and then everybody just started doing a comeback, and then that's where we got the Bufflin dancing. That's so funny. But yeah, but
Uh,
yeah, such a heyday. But anyways, for me as an unbiased fan, like a fan who loves the aspect of hockey itself, best series in my opinion, I would say is what Lyra said too, Colorado and Red Wings. The the intensity of it. I mean, I would say maybe the '90s hockey was really intensive. Like even if it was
yeah.
just between the Devils, the Devils, the Red Wings, and Avalanche, like it was really crazy because every time they get into to each other's throat, you just know it's gonna be a crazy ass
It's a
playoff, and
fist
then you're
fight
just gonna
every
see,
single
yeah,
time.
like I feel like if I was a fan that time, I probably would have been like, oh, I fucking hate the Red Wings. But you know,
Yeah.
if they won, sure, because that was a really fun match. You know what I mean? Because like you practically just have to give a mutual respect between them, because that's really good.
I'm sure
Yeah,
eventually
but
that's what it was.
yeah, But yeah, that's the
Yeah.
only thing I can say off. What about you, Drum? What do you think is your best hockey?
So, as a fan, I want to say for most of my life, I got to see some really interesting series, some really good ones. Um, I, I think I go all the way back to 2003, the Stanley Cup final of the New Jersey Devils and the Anaheim Ducks, and I think it's that kind of end of that era that of what we're talking about from the 90s, where it was really hard hitting, like it was tough, like grind out games. Like I look at the series, 4 shutouts in this out of 7, like 3-0 game 1, 3-0 game 2, game 4 is 1-0, and then game 7 was 3-0 New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
And like they were low scoring affairs. Besides, I want to say game 6, which game 6, by the way, is famous, and it's one of the reasons I love this series. So for many of you that remember Scott Stevens, he was kind of the villain, kind of like the Brad Marchand that we have now in the modern NHL. Scott Stevens was an absolute fucking unit, to say the least, and he laid out Paul Correa like unconscious on the ice, and it changed his career. That hit changed Paul Correa's career, and the fact that he came back that game to score, let's see, so they were up 3-1, so they would have been up 4-1 in that second period, towards the end of the second period, and he fucking scored a missile of a shot, in unbelievable like line, like on the floor, or what was it,
off the floor,
on the board, Paul Correa. Man, you get goosebumps watching that. And if any of you that watch this don't know that, go search it up on YouTube and tell me you don't get goosebumps watching it. It's such a one of those like historical moments that you don't think of. Even though they didn't win the Stanley Cup, they were one game short of winning the Stanley Cup. That's one of those games that I remembered for such a long, long time. Even though I didn't find out about this game till later on as a kid. Now, if I'm thinking about growing up and watching hockey, like, I started watching back in like 03, 04, before the lockout and before Crosby, but like I really got into watching the game when Crosby entered the league, and those Pittsburgh Detroit series,
Oh yeah.
both teams like made it to the finals back to back.
Yeah.
And the fact that both of those teams won their Stanley Cups in those respective series just goes to show you how entertaining those series were. You know what I mean? And of course, as a Toronto fan, I have to say this past series was Toronto and Tampa. Like you kind of had a little bit of everything. You had some like kind of like blowout games between both teams. You had some really like on the edge of your seat games, right? And I thought Toronto was close to winning that first round when they were up, I think 3-1 against the Lightning. And then Tampa just came back. Like it was a great series. Either of those teams, I'm pretty sure if Toronto had won, they would have been in the same place as Tampa. And that's not saying anything against Florida or the Rangers when they played Tampa. But I think Toronto was right there with Tampa. You know what I mean? And I think they still are. So in terms of my favorite series, it's definitely between the Maple Leafs and the Lightning this past season, and then definitely the Ducks and the Devils back in 03 as a fan. So this kind of brings me to another topic, and this goes in the playoff as well, having the rivalries of the teams. And as much as a lot of people miss 1v8, 2v7 in that kind of playoff format, the way that they have it is that the first round is the most exciting
next to the Stanley Cup Finals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have a
First and
lot
second
of
round.
great rivalries. Like, think about it. You had Toronto versus Montreal, which hadn't happened in such a long time,
Calgary,
right?
Edmonton.
And we got lucky with that series, even though it was a bit, I'm not gonna say it,
For
but
you.
I'm not gonna say it, but like, and even Winnipeg, Nashville, like I think those two teams are rivals. Like a lot of people say Winnipeg and Minnesota, but I really think it's Winnipeg, Nashville.
I think it's
And
Winnipeg.
I think I know Nashville is a different team now, but anytime I watch those two teams play, there's a little bit of some heat that goes on between those two. Who else? Like current rivalries that I really like right now? I love the Sharks and Golden Knights. Give me that every day. That's must watch.
Hell yeah.
That's must watch, dude. I know that the Sharks aren't, in their glory days anymore, and they're gonna be, kind of rebuilding their team soon. But like, those were some, like even now, it's really like tough, like gritty games. Like, and I think that as one of those fans from the early like 2000s, I really appreciate those rivalries now that I'm older, you know. And definitely Pittsburgh, Washington. That has been one of the longest like modern day rivalries that I've seen in my life. And you're gonna always have the names Crosby and Ovechkin etched in your minds when you think of those two and the games that they played against each other. And the one game I think of is the dueling hat tricks between Crosby and Ovechkin.
Yes. This was like back in 2009, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. I'm surprised you remember that. That was insane. That's like their first battle ever.
Yeah, and even now, going on to year 18 for both of them, there's still kind of a passion when those two teams play. You know what I mean? And they don't. Each team doesn't like each other, and the fan bases don't like each other. But there's a mutual respect now that those teams have won their Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
In that respective. What about you, JM? Well, what would you say? Like, I know you've been a fan for only a bit, but which rivalries do you really enjoy watching in the league?
Of the rivalries that I enjoy watching is Sharks and the Vegas Knights. That's the only rivalry I've seen that is like that was the first time I watched. It's really crazy. Yeah, heated because you see Reeves just being a piece of shit, and then you see those other people just like I don't know who. It's been a while, but yeah, like you just see a few Sharks players just going off after him, and it's just really funny the way they interact with each other. What else? Oh boy. That's about it. It's the only thing I can think of, to be honest, because most of the rivalries that I when I became a fan was practically like dying off because um Sid's Penguins were not that weren't like super top. Then the Capitals were kind of losing their step too. What else? We also got it's the only thing I can think of like on the top of my head was like and the Blackhawks too. I don't know who were their rivals
Blackhawks
during
and Kings. Blackhawks
yeah,
and
they're
Kings.
Blackhawks and the Kings. Yeah, they kind of lost it too. And it's the only thing I can think on top of my head. But you know, out of context, one thing I can see that can be a good rivalry coming is the Florida teams. I just hope and wish that the Panthers can pick off from where they left off from last season. Anyways, yes.
I think it's fair too because like you said, you've only been a real hockey fan for like a couple of years, and the last couple of years, the only rivalries that have been, I want to say, showcased have been the Battle of Florida and the Battle of Alberta.
Yeah, I was gonna say Battle of Alberta. I kind of forgot to mention that some of those games, man. Who were the goalies that fought the last time?
Friggin' wasn't it Cam
Smith
Talbot
and
and
Talbot.
yeah, Cam Talbot and it
Yeah,
was
But
the
that's the
year.
funny. Yeah, the funniest thing is like, they practically switched teams.
Yeah, it was the year that
That's
they
so
switched
funny.
teams.
when they that I think that's and those guys are beauties. That's all I gotta say. You know what I mean? But
All I gotta say is I have to give it to Talbot for trying to fight Mike Smith. That guy, from what I've seen, from what I've read in the online forums, can throw it down.
Dude,
One
Mike
of the
Smith is
goalies in this
unhinged.
day that can fight people.
yeah,
He is unhinged, man. But I guess my favorite rivalry, obviously San Jose Vegas, but also Chicago LA between 2012 and 2014. A lot of people might not remember, but for a while, the Western Conference did not have parity because for 3 straight years, I believe it was, we had Chicago and LA in the Western Final, and it was only broken in 2015 when both LA and San Jose missed the playoffs, and Anaheim had to shoe in to be the Californian body bag for Chicago. So there's that. Battle of Alberta. We only got to see 5 games of it, unfortunately, but every time those two teams meet in the regular season, and touching on what you said, Drum, when Mike Smith and Cam Talbot, I don't want to call it a fight because let's be honest, Cam Talbot got ran over.
yeah,
But Matthew Tkachuk and Zach Cassian, for a while, gave that rivalry a lot of heat when Edmonton wasn't exactly a playoff team yet. Because for a while,
yeah.
Calgary was the only Alberta team making the playoffs. Now that they're both playoff caliber teams, I'm very, very excited, especially now that the Sharks are shitters, that we're gonna see a lot of this rivalry in the upcoming playoff years. And Drum touched on it earlier. This format just fuels the fire of these rivalries. I mean, division rivalries for the first 2 rounds. A lot of people like it, but I love it. It makes for great TV. Where else are you gonna get Edmonton and Calgary in the second round? You know what I mean? So
Exactly. And I mean that
pretty
playoff matchup of the Battle of Alberta, like wow. Like that was a really fun series to watch. Although
on
we
paper,
all
anyway.
know what happened, right? Like Edmonton just absolutely wiped the floor of Calgary. But
Yeah.
it was still fun. You know what I mean? It's just like I said, as being a Maple Leafs fan and playing against the Montreal Canadiens, like that is a rivalry as old as time. You know what I mean? And the fact that I got to see that in my lifetime, like I kind of really have like a respect for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting now this year with Calgary and Edmonton. There's been, a lot of changes in Calgary. I think Nazem is going to add a lot of flair to that rivalry. Now, the NHL,
Oh yeah.
for some reason, only decided that they're going to play 3 times this year. Calgary and
What?
Edmonton, yeah. So
But
we
they're
gotta,
division rivals.
yeah. Well, we gotta enjoy those games while we can,
Oh,
right?
you know
Ooh.
why? Because they added Seattle, and they also
Yeah,
happen to spot in the Pacific Division. So
yeah,
that sucks. They used to play 6 times a year. Bring back those days.
yeah. Low
uh,
key, a rivalry that isn't. I don't know if it's gonna be now as renowned as it was past few years, but Calgary and LA. Matthew Kachuk
mm,
and Drew Doughty just had it for each other. Like I think they just hate each other.
yeah.
And Matthew Kachuk being the troll that he was, like that was so funny. Just watching Drew Doughty, like you could see that like Matt was in his head for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and now it's gonna be interesting. I think a rivalry that we're gonna see this year is gonna be the Kachuk brothers, Florida and Ottawa. No one's predicting it, but I think it's gonna be fun. I could see them getting into a fight as well.
this
Oh, that'd
season.
be-
Season
that'd be
prediction: the Kachuk brothers throw hands.
Gonna throw down. Let's go.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
yeah,
have
man,
to do
that'll
it for
be
the
funny.
fans. Just do it for the hockey culture, please. You know what
do
I
it for the
mean?
culture.
Do it for the culture. Just
That'll
throw.
be interesting family dinner.
Yeah,
Imagine that.
Yeah,
Like, so how's the fight,
but
guys?
you know what?
I'm
Like
very
after, but
disappointed.
you know what? After they fight, you know, you could just see them have like a bro hug and then just go off to the penalty box for 5.
Just talking about what's for dinner tonight.
Yeah, yeah. Did you do your laundry? You
Dude,
know what I
you gotta
mean?
put the trash out, or else I'm gonna get grounded.
I know. Mom's watching us in the stands, like that kind of
That'd be
stuff.
awesome. Like you see them throw it out, and then they just pan to the parents, and they're just cheering for a brother each. That would be just comedic.
That'll be awesome.
Now
Or
the now,
I can just imagine the mom just so quiet. You can just see her dying inside while the dad's just cheering, and the
bro,
sisters.
Keith Kachuk will just like lose his like mind if he sees his boys fight.
I
Seriously.
feel like he would lose his shirt.
Nah,
if he did
you know
that.
what he's gonna do? He's gonna climb over and join. He's gonna be a 3-way brawl. Bring back like a good old 90s brawls with Keith
Let me show
Kachuk.
you.
Let me show
Young
you
Woodford
how it's
Tappers,
done.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm your Google Assistant.
Oh, it's gonna be like, oh wow, is that
Yeah.
is that
yeah.
Keith Kachuk's music? And just see
Oh
him
god.
coming off from the side.
That's Keith Kachuk. That's Keith Kachuk's music.
Oh my god, Keith Kachuk with a chair!
Oh
he's
my
getting-
god. It's gonna turn into like a WWE pay-per-view on the
Oh,
ice.
speaking
man.
of WWE, Drumm, you mentioned the Calgary LA rivalry.
Yeah.
One of your current players had the best Superman dive ever into a dog pile. And viewers, if you can go back and watch this. If you're an avid viewer of Steve's Dang It, you know what I'm talking about. So a game, I think it was a year or two ago. It might have been 2 years ago. Calgary, LA, like you said, they don't like each other. Dowdy and Kachuk hate each other. So naturally, they get into it. Everyone else gets into it. There's a massive dog pile. And who comes swooping in from the point? Captain Mark Giordano with the absolute dolphin dive into the dog pile. Oh my goodness. Ever since I saw that, I have had the utmost respect for Mark Giordano. I'm so glad he's on the Leafs because, like, they need that kind of leadership in that team where, oh, you want to go after Matthews? Let me just dolphin dive in your face, motherfucker. You're not going anywhere. So,
Yeah.
if you guys haven't seen that clip, I highly recommend. It is a 10 out of 10 Hockey Hall of Fame clip. It is incredible.
Yo,
And if
you gotta post that in the memes later.
Oh, dude, let me
Yeah.
post it right now.
Yeah, post it now. I'll give it a watch after. So you know what? Let's move on to this topic because we're almost out of time here.
Okay.
So what made us a fan of our team? And I guess I could start off with this. So growing up, like I remember being like 3-4 years old with my dad, and we used to watch Hockey Night in Canada all the time on Saturday, right? And of course, if you remember Coach's Corner, you would have like Don Cherry, Ron McLean, and all that, and whatever. And but I was really always intrigued watching Toronto play for some reason, and this was before the Jets 2.0 came back, right? And I'm from
Yeah.
Winnipeg, right? So like, you know, who do you cheer for? And I was like, well, I want to cheer for a Canadian team for sure. And I don't know. Watching, I just like the players on Toronto more. Like I watched a lot of Toronto, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, and I remember watching. You know, I used to be a really big fan of goalies, and I used to love watching Ed Belfour playing net. Like this,
Oh, wow.
this guy, like, you know, he was the last goalie for the Maple Leafs that has won a playoff series for them. Ed Belfour, you know, and I used to have a poster of him and his iconic eagle cage mask, which was really cool. You know, they called him the Eagle, and he's actually a Manitoba boy. So shout outs,
Belfour?
yeah, he's a Manitoba boy.
Oh wow, that is a fun fact that I did not know. Awesome.
Yeah, I think he's from. If I'm correct, he's from Morden, which is not too far from. No,
Yeah.
not too far. And I used to love watching Matt Sundin play. Like, this guy was a phenom in his career, and he was one of the top Swedish players with Lidström, I would say, like in NHL history. And one of those games that I really remember with Sundin was his hat trick game, his 500th goal hat trick overtime winner. Like, the Air Canada Center blew the roof off when he scored that goal. And that's one of those games I have like goosebumps. Like, I remember watching them beat Calgary in that overtime, and he just sniped it top corner for his 500th career goal.
That was the hat trick goal, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, like, sorry for getting off track, but like, Toronto was really a team that I got invested in once I got to know its players and its coach, who is the late Pat Quinn. You know,
Yep.
he's a legend in the coaching history of NHL, and it was a team I could really get behind. And then all of a sudden, they just stopped making the playoffs. And I remember the year that the Maple Leafs and the Islanders were fighting for that last playoff spot, and it was the last game of the season between the Islanders and the Leafs blew it in overtime, 4-3 Islanders. And why do I remember that game? I don't know. But after that, I just had a bad feeling that the Leafs were going to have years of torture, which they did. They ultimately did. You know, when Sundin went to Vancouver, I was like, it's all over. You know what I mean? Like, the Leafs are nowhere near the playoff spot. You knew that the East belonged to Detroit Detroit was in the West at the time, but you knew that the West belonged to Pittsburgh and Washington, and or the East, sorry. But yeah, like, I really did stick with Toronto in those bad years, like the Phil Kessel years, you know, the Joffrey Lupul years. And then
God.
when we won that number 1 overall pick for Matthews, like, I was finally excited to really get behind this team and believe that we had something to cheer for. And then Austin Matthews' first game as a Maple Leaf, like, holy shit, 4 goals. That second goal that he scored, where he stripped Eric Carlson of the puck, his best goal as a Maple Leaf. Like, go watch any of his goals and watch his second goal in that first game that he played. That is iconic for Austin Matthews. Personally, from what I remember, out of all of his goals that he scored. So yeah, that is basically how I became a fan. Was just really watching those Hockey Night in Canada matchups of the Canadians and the Leafs, and I like the Leafs more. So that's how I became a lifetime fan of this team. So, Lyra, you've been you said that you started off as an Oilers fan, but then what got you into the Sharks?
So I touched on it a little bit earlier, but the main reason is one man, and his name is Evgeny Nabokov. So you might remember Drumm. We went to middle school together, but before I played defenseman, I really liked goalies, and I liked being a goalie. And during that time, Evgeny Nabokov to me was the GOAT of goalies because this man single-handedly carried the Sharks in that 08 playoff run. And people are going to say that I'm wrong because of who the Sharks had in that roster, but that was the first year that I really watched the playoffs, and I watched that San Jose Calgary team. And they almost lost to that Calgary squad. 7 games. And they were the second seed.
Yeah.
But Nabokov's heroics just would not allow it. And the reason why I've been a consistent San Jose Sharks fan is it's kind of stupid, but my favorite color of all time is teal. And there's one team in the NHL that wears teal, and that's the Sharks. That's why I started watching them. What kept me around as a fan between 2009 and 2000, and I want to say even 2019, the Sharks were always a good team in the regular season. The only exceptions being 2012 and 2015. And only one of those years did they not make the playoffs. Now, the reason why I'm still a fan to this day, I've seen this team through its ups and downs. I've seen them go through players. I've seen them sign players that are just like, what the fuck? Why would you sign that guy? But I've also seen them sign players who are like, oh my God, he signed with the Sharks. The first player that made me go like that was Danny Heatley in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Danny Heatley, he was a force in that Ottawa team.
Oh yeah.
So
he
when the Sharks signed him, I was like, oh baby, this is the missing piece we need. Jonathan Chichu fell off a cliff. Let's just bring in Danny Heatley. We'll get another 40-goal scorer. And for a while it worked. Up until 2013 it worked. And then 2014 happened. And for those of you who don't know, and Drumm, your playoff memory that you want to erase is 2021 against Montreal, right?
I have a lot.
2014.
I have a lot of playoff memories that I want to erase, my friend. It's not just Montreal. Montreal's the number one, but there's a lot.
One. Yeah. So my number one is 2014. For those of you who don't know, prior to 2016 and minus 2009, 2014 was the Sharks' best year as in the regular season. They had 114 points that year. And I talked about it earlier when we were talking about playoff rivalries. For a while, between 2012 and 2014, it was Chicago and LA's conference. The reason why 2014 pisses me off so much, because 2014, the Sharks and LA Kings played in the first round. And this was the first time that we had this playoff format where it was Division 2 versus Division 3 and then so forth, right?
Yeah.
So the Sharks were their favorite team in the series. They were the second seed. And when I tell you that they made Jonathan Quick look like an ECHL goalie for the first two games, I am not bullshitting. First game, game one, they won 6-3. And you're probably thinking, okay, whatever, it happened. Game two, they wiped the floor with that LA team 7-2. Game three, switch over to LA, Sharks win a really close game in OT. So we're up 3-0. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh my fucking God, we're about to dethrone the Kings of the West. This is the year. And then they get stomped 4 games in a row. The first time the Sharks ever had a major choke in their franchise, 2014. And that was the year when I was like, is it time to switch teams? But then I thought, you know what? No other team makes me feel the way the Sharks do. I'm going to stick it through. 2015, they missed the playoffs, and I'm like, fuck, I made the wrong decision. 2016 reignited my fanfare for this team because they had to face the LA Kings again in the first round. And I was thinking, oh, fuck, here we go again. We're gonna get a series lead against the Kings and then fucking blow it. And it almost came through because the Sharks won that series in 5 games. And 3 out of the 5 games were only 1 goal, separated by 1 goal. And game 5 in LA, mind you, they were up 3-0. They blow the 3-0 lead. And I'm thinking, oh fuck, here it is. This is where it starts. They're gonna choke this game and we're gonna choke the series. And then they didn't. They scored 3 unanswered goals and they won that series. So I'm thinking, hey, we won a playoff series. I think this is the year. Then they go on to beat Nashville. And the thing that made me a true and never faltering Sharks fan, and I'm going to tell you guys this now. Nothing that the Sharks do, except, maybe relocate, nothing that they do will make me stop being a Sharks fan. And that's because in 2016, they made the finals for the first time. And that year, that Sharks team, man, like, if you watched the first 3 rounds, you would have not believed that they would have lost in the final. I thought they were going to get wiped by the Blues that year because the Blues were good. Tarasenko was having a career year that year.
Yeah, I remember that year.
Yeah, and that's basically like, it's a long story, but I almost switched more than once on this team. And I feel like now that I'm still a Sharks fan in 2022, I feel like I've seen all the failures that they could possibly have. They've choked the 3-0 lead. They've lost the Stanley Cup Finals. They've lost in the Western Conference Finals twice, actually 3 times since I became a fan. and now they're just not going to be a playoff team for the next 3 years. So I don't see a reason why I should switch over now. And I still get excited for this team. I'm excited for this team right now. They look like shit on paper, but Thomas Bordalo, William Eklund, Capo Kakinen, I'm stoked for this team. So, long TLDR, what made me a Sharks fan? Evgeny Nabokov. Evgeny Nabokov and consistent regular season victories and successes that made me a fan. They were, for a while, the Washington Capitals of the West. So,
Yeah.
that's a testament to how good they were. But yeah, that's how I became a Sharks fan. How about you, JM? What apart from living in Winnipeg, what made you a Jets fan?
Oh boy. Oh boy, a very good question. I know listeners is just very recently I became a fan, but 2018, it's always 2018. Unforgettable. Because I was just working. I was just doing my own thing. Wasn't a hockey fan, but then I started watching this game because my dad at home. He just chills at home, just watches whatever's on TV, and I just watched this. And then this one player just captivated me soon as he always steps on the ice, and that is Brandon Tanev. I swear,
Mm,
every time he goes on the ice, he just brings his 110%. Like, oh, do you see this person? Let's say a freaking tall guy, because Brandon Tanev is pretty short for a hockey player, but he doesn't even care. He would just practically go in there in the corners and be like, "Oh, I don't care about you. I'm gonna go and dig in for the puck, and if you're tall enough or you're gonna outstrength me, I don't care." That guy just literally brought it every time. Yeah, one of every time I watch him, he just got so captivated. It's like I was
are
like
you
so close to just buying his jersey, and then too bad we had to not sign him. And
you
yeah,
still keep up with
those
him? You still keep up with him? He's in
I still
Seattle.
keep up with him every time. And whenever I get the chance to see him play, I just be like, so right now that's why I'm a huge fan of like the Jets. Right now it's really hard to watch the Jets because the past few after 2018 they just practically slowly deflated into like a flat tire. Now that they
Yeah.
got Bones as a coach, I am happy that there's a new direction. I just hope that they're able to find something new there, able to discover something new like we talked about earlier, Shifley and Wheeler discovering their scoring prowess plus getting a defensive upside on their game too. Because we
Mm.
all know that how they suck at forechecking. They're
Yeah, I
practically
mean
just
that's their age. That's their age showing. I
yeah,
think.
that's true. But anyways, I'm getting off track. Yeah. Jets fan 2018. Um, that's why I'm also a huge fan of any bottom six players that plays like Tanev, Appleton. Apparently, one of the Jets players right now, I think is like Mikey Aceman. Apparently, he plays like Tanev, so that's one player I would love to see play. But yeah,
Hmm.
sorry, I just have to cut you really short because that's the only thing I can talk about.
That's all right,
Pretty
man.
recent.
That's all right. I mean, you are a newer half hockey fan, so it's understandable.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I mean I know like a lot of the Maple Leafs like playoff runs, well, Lyra was here for two of like gut wrenching in different ways, how they lost game 7. But man, it is, if you're a Maple Leafs fan and you're still with this team, you're the real fans. Now, I'm not talking about the ones that are just like, oh, Matthews scored 60 and then they lose the next game and they're like, get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. Like those guys are just, I don't know. They're not even hockey fans. Like you
Fair
have to
weather
appreciate when a team wins, when a team loses, when they're up and when they're down, right? And it's
Yeah.
part of the experience of being a fan. But
Yeah.
I think the hockey gods or someone, they just have it out for the Maple Leafs. Like, and in my mind, I'm like, what? Like, and it's kind of going back to what we were talking about, like with teams being in their own heads. I think the Maple Leafs are a prime example of a team being in their own head.
And I think this series that they played against Tampa Bay, they weren't in their own head. They matched up until I want to say the final 5 minutes of or final 4 minutes of Game 7 against Tampa.
Yeah.
Which was really broke my heart for them. You know what I mean? And that's why I felt gutted. Like I was like, wow, like this was a series, a game where they lost again in Game 7 in a first round playoff matchup, but there was something different compared to when they lost to Montreal. When Montreal, that like as the Rock would say, that was a complete piece of dog shit of a series. So bad. Like, oh my god, how can you be up 3-1, losing John Tavares in Game 1 from frigging Corey Perry kneeing him in the head, and they were up 3-1, and then Game 5 and game, like, go watch those games, go watch those replays. How do you, like, you were down, you tied it back up in the end of the game to get the overtime. Game 5, they just fucking took a diarrhea shit in their pants, man. In Game 6, that overtime, Matthews was literally shooting, the only one shooting at the net, and it just wouldn't go in. And then Travis Dermott gives up the puck, the Kakanyemi. And after I saw that goal go in, and Leira was there when I was watching that overtime, he felt my heartbreak. He literally saw Steve Dangle's heartbreak, man. Like I don't even know what to say.
To be fair, it was like it was forecasted.
It was forecasted, but why? But that year, you knew when they were up 3-1, and then they lost Game 5, and then they did the exact same thing in Game 6. That they were in their head, no questions, no doubts in my mind. Which is why I was kind of like, what the fuck is happening? Right? Like, seriously, what the fuck was happening in that series?
Be fair, if it happened first time, okay, sure, I would understand. Second time, but the third time, come on, guys. Like, Sheldon Keefe, you're a good coach. I have to give it to you. You turned around the team, but you gotta do something about you guys losing.
Yeah,
3-1, and then you guys just lose Game 7 because you guys just decided to just give up on the play or the series, which is very disappointing as a Maple Leaf fan. But as for me, I feel sad for the Maple Leaf fan, because come on, you guys have a very good team. Even you guys have a good D line. You got Giordano, Giordano, Brody, Muzzin.
Yeah.
Really great goalie, really great defenseman. Like, your goalies might be a bit off, but you can practically like, they can practically be helped by the defenseman, the D line. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
and
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. And quickly, I'm just gonna touch about their goaltending. You know, like when Freddie Anderson came in and played for the team, and watched these guys like Matthews and Marner and Nylander, like, watch them grow in their game. Like, Freddie was a great goaltender, and he's a great goaltender in Carolina. Are you kidding me? Carolina is like one of the teams that are like bound to win the Stanley Cup. Like, look at that Carolina team and tell me they don't have a shot at the cup. Freddie Anderson is going to be the key for Carolina to win that cup. He cannot get injured, and that's been his problem, is the injuries.
He's made of paper.
And it's the same as Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell came into the Maple Leafs for a Jake Muzzin trade. We thought that Jake Muzzin was the big piece. No, it was Jack Campbell. And look how he played against Tampa Bay. Like, excluding the Montreal series where everyone just played bad, Jack Campbell was, I think, honestly, a key piece for that Leafs team. And now he's in Edmonton. And Edmonton's going to have a good chance at the cup too with a goalie. Now, my question is, right, you have Samsonov, who is projected to be really good in Washington and just didn't turn out to be good. And Matt Murray, who's a back-to-back Stanley Cup champion in Pittsburgh and has just fallen off a cliff of mediocrity, you know, which like are both gonna have a bounce back? Like that would be the best case scenario, right? You have these guys, they don't have to play a perfect regular season, but in the playoffs, if they show up, and especially with Matt Murray's experience on that Penguins team, that could be a game changer for the Leafs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be saying this and then, you know, we get to the playoffs and then this happens again. If this happens again, someone has to go. Both players and coaches, there's no question about it. But like, you bring in guys that win Stanley Cups, that means something. They won a Stanley Cup for a reason with that team. And it's a team thing when you win a championship, no matter what league you play in, unless it's the NBA.
Well, even in the NBA.
Well, even in the NBA, but you to an extent, right? Because you know in the NBA that players kind of can dictate where they want to go, wherever the money talks, right?
Yeah.
But I look at like the NHL and the parity. There's so much of it. Like any team could really, like you said, all teams have some kind of noticeable like player that's like a superstar of some kind, right? They have a face of the franchise. So it's going to be an interesting, season for Toronto and sorry about going back to them, but like I really wanted to talk about their playoffs, because it's part of me being a fan of that team. And have I been heartbroken? Yeah, but do I give up on this team? No, I don't. Even though if I call Matthews and Marner bums, they're not bums. Those guys, they make the type of money that they do because they perform. Why do you think Matthews won the MVP? Why do you think Marner was also on the possibility of winning an Art Ross? You know what I mean?
He was in the race, yeah.
He was in the race. So that's just me. We're gonna quickly move on to predictions of NHL awards this year, and then I think we're gonna end it off. So I'm just gonna, because I don't like have all of the awards.
Are we talking individual?
But we're gonna just talk about the major ones. You know what I mean? Not
so both team and individual.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. We'll talk about the Hart Trophy. So it's going to be kind of hard to judge this trophy until we watch how the regular season plays. But there's no reason that Austin Matthews is not in this conversation again. You know what I mean? He is the Hart winner of last season for obvious reasons, being the first guy since Steven Stamkos 10 years ago to pot 60 in the net. You know what I mean? And people are projecting that him and Marner, that Matthews could be on a pace of 70 goals, which we have not seen probably since Solani.
Yeah.
Right?
76 goals in that year, right? Yeah.
Right? So like if Marner and Matthews stay healthy in an 82 game schedule and he gets, say, I don't know, 71 goals, does he win the Hart automatically, no matter who else is in that conversation?
I mean, to be fair, basing on age, 25 to 26, 25 to 28 is technically the age where you practically peak as a player, because the turnover rate as a player, unless you're like super good like Crosby, is really fast. Like as soon as you reach 30, I know this is like, it's just because of the age, like TSN news, but in my honest opinion, I think once you reach 30, that's when you realize that you're gonna start slowing down. You have to change practically the way you play the game, because you're gonna slow down, because hockey right now is practically fast. Like, let's say maybe in the 80s, you can practically be like you can skate like a beer leaguer. You can still be in it because the only thing they care about is throwing hits, hurting people. But now you can just practically skate really fast and avoid the hit or getting hurt by someone. Yeah, that's why, in my honest opinion, I gotta agree with with Drumm, I think Marner and Matthews are gonna be toe to toe with that. Marner with assists and goals for Matthews.
Yeah.
I think for the heart, Matthews, McDavid, and McKinnon are my top three. For the heart.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say the same. It's gonna be Matthews, McDavid, and McKinnon, and it depends really on Marner's season. Whether
Yeah.
he gets he's on that line of that contention for me. So
That is true.
So next award.
next award, we'll talk about the Norris Trophy. So Kel McCarr
Oh,
coming off
baby.
that wonderful postseason and regular season, well deserved of the Norris Trophy. But I am gonna say this: Yossi kind of got ripped.
Yeah. Regular season, yes, absolutely.
Because
I agree.
Yossi had a monster season. Like, I don't think people understand that. Like, as he almost scored 100 points as a defenseman. Like, what is this guy,
Wow.
Bobby Orr? Like, seriously. But
Um,
I don't know. What do you guys think?
to expand on that, people don't realize that Cale Makar had a lot more to work with compared to Roman Yossi. Roman Yossi did a lot of that stuff last year, working with a lot less with that national team. Because people got to realize Colorado, on paper, they're not a star-studded team, but that was a deep, deep team last year.
Oh yeah,
And case in point, why they won the cup. Well, so I actually agree. I think Yossi got robbed on Norris Trophy because Yossi put up numbers while working with less. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But as far as this year's James Norris Memorial Trophy winner, I have three candidates, and it's Cale Makar, Morris Snyder, and I want to say Yossi again, even though I did say that he was going to have decline a little bit earlier. But yeah, I think Yossi. I think I do think he's gonna decline, but I don't see that he's gonna decline that much. So I still think he's gonna be in that race. If the Toronto defensemen are healthy, if TJ Brody could be up there, that's my dark horse.
Oh,
That's my dark horse up there.
that is an interesting pick. I do like Brody. I don't know if he will be able to make it along those like lines with those guys. You know what I mean? What about you, JM? What do you think about the Norris Trophy, best defenseman in the league? Like your top three right now?
Top three right now is the high schooler of Colorado.
Yeah.
Cale McCarr. He practically looks like a high schooler. Hands down, like probably an avalanche, quote unquote, an avalanche. Okay, anyways.
Like a landslide. Okay.
Practically a landslide, but we'll see how it goes because Roman Yossi, past two seasons, his name was practically top of the name for the Norris. We'll see Moritz Seider. His name is practically huge too. We'll see if Shea Theodore comes back again to play. Because remember the past few times when they able to reach the final Stanley Cup finals, Shea Theodore was practically in the name of it was practically in the mouth of everybody because of how good he was during the playoffs. So like if out of nowhere I would say Shea Theodore top three, like what Leira said, Makar, Yossi, and Cider.
That's a good dark horse pick, Shea Theodore. I mean, he is
Yeah,
good.
no,
And, coming from a
he
rival,
is good.
he is
I
really
just
good.
kind of sucks because I think he wasn't able to do much last season because if correct me if I'm wrong, he got injured, right?
Let's see how many games he played. But I think you might be right. Well, he only missed 4 games last year, but I think Vegas as a team overall last year they had a down year. So
I mean,
I think
to be fair, yeah, they hardly have any of their top players. Stone was injured. Eichel came in there. It was like, oops, I got injured too. Carlson was practically having a down year, still having a down year. I don't even know what's happening to Carlson, which is so weird.
I think he's coming back.
They practically lost most of their star players. The only thing you have to worry about for the Vegas right now is defensemen, because the defensemen, their D line is practically good. Martinez, Theodore, yeah.
White Cloud's becoming a pretty good defenseman too.
Oh yeah, White Cloud is. Oh yeah, you know what? Good call, man. If White Cloud, if I know that White Cloud's not gonna score that much, but from what I've heard, from what I've read and seen, he's practically like uh Leira, defensive defenseman of your old team that was really good, but it's now dog shit. I forgot his name.
Vlasic before he fell off a cliff.
Yeah, there. Apparently he's like Vlasic because he's apparently
yeah.
really good defensively. So yeah, rip to Vlasic. I wish I seen him when he was a star. Now he's practically like a
Yeah, he's
pylon.
like
Just rewatch 2016 playoffs and you'll see Vlasic at his peak.
he's basically he's basically a better version of Shane Gostisbehere.
Yeah,
Basically.
that's another guy who fell off a cliff.
Oh god, I'm not even gonna get into that one. He's just
all right. Now what's next? Vezina.
Well, I didn't get to pick my Norris candidates yet, but obviously I really went into this podcast talking about Moritz Seider, why I think Red Wings fans have a reason to be excited about this guy. He literally looks like the next Nick Lidstrom, and he got 50 Nick Lidstrom, and he got 50 points in his rookie season. There's no reason to tell me that he is not top 3 defenseman
They found another Nick Lidstrom. That's so fucking lucky for them.
diamond in the rough, my friend. You know what I mean? But he was a top pick in a couple drafts ago. Kel McCarr, not really a discussion to be had with this kid. You know, he's special for that Colorado team, and he's gonna definitely be more relied as a leader, although he still looks like a high school kid, as JM put it. And we wanna talk about the young guys. That I'm gonna actually say it's not Roman Yossi's here to be as a candidate, although he will surprise me, I'm sure. I'm gonna say Quinn Hughes, because Vancouver is expected to have a big year, and I kind of talked about it earlier too, about Vancouver's expectations this year, that they're ready for the playoffs, they're ready for that next step. Quinn Hughes is that number 1 guy on the blue line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with him, and I heard that Pug Colson's gonna have a monster season. Vasily Podkolzin. So Quinn Hughes, he's gonna be on people's radar for the James Norris Trophy. But if I were to pick a winner right now, it's Cale Makar. He kind of runs away with it. Like I said, nothing to really get into with that. Vezina Trophy.
Wait, guys, I just have to cut you guys off. We completely forgot about Mr. Fox of the Rangers.
Oh yes, you know what? You are right. So watch Adam. So watch Adam Fox win the Norris Trophy now, and he was, by the way, 2 years ago he did win the Norris Trophy. So it's a good thing that you did mention it. He's another guy that kind of got gypped of it. That I didn't think of.
That's true. When he wins the trophy this year, he'd be like, "Look at these fucking idiots on this podcast, not even naming me."
Yeah. So sorry, Mr. Fox, but you know what I mean. Like,
I believe in your team. I believed in them last year.
Yeah. So yeah, you know what, Adam Fox for sure. I think the Rangers are a Stanley Cup contender, and he could be in the conversation. But I think Quinn Hughes, just because of Vancouver's like importance of getting into the playoffs, I think he's gonna push. And people kind of look at that too, besides the stats, right? Like they're gonna be like, wow, like he really helped this team get to the playoffs. He's gonna get my vote for the James Norris and for the Hart, right? So I could definitely see that. But Adam Fox, a really good defenseman that I'm sure that he's gonna get votes as well. We got to move on to the Vezina Trophy. I'll kick it off. I think it's Freddie Anderson's time to shine. I think Carolina is gonna be one of those top teams. Freddie Anderson, I'm gonna say, stays healthy this year, and with that, he's gonna put up 45 wins to 50 wins as a goalie this season. And there's not really a lot of questions except, is he going to get injured? And if he does, I think that ruins his chances of the Vezina.
That's really the only one that'll root it for him.
Igor's going to get a lot of looks, of course, being the past Vezina trophy winner. And I think the Rangers are going all the way this year, to be honest. That's the way that looks, especially if Lafreniere has a monster season. And then there's a lot of good goalies. Vasilevsky. What am I even saying? He's number 2 in that conversation with Igor. And then my dark horse is going to be Connor Hellebuck. And let me tell you why it's going to be Connor Hellebuck. First of all, he won the Vezina Trophy not too long ago, if you guys remember. Second of all, just like Vancouver, he's gonna be a big reason if the Jets make the playoffs this year. He's gonna be a big reason. That Jets decor ain't cutting it. I'm sorry, and they have cap space to go get a defenseman. But if Connor Hellebuck stands on his head like we know Connor Hellebuck can, he is going to get a lot of Vezina attention for that award. So that's my dark horse is Hellebuck, but it's between Igor and Vasi again, in my opinion.
That's a pretty good pick. JM, you want to take the next one?
Sure thing. Opinion. I gotta agree with him. Same people too. Because of his explanation, I don't want to add on to what he said. Practically spot on. I would say dark horse for me is Ville Husso of the Detroit Red Wings.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, he practically carried the Blues into almost. I'm not sure if they got into the playoffs, but yeah, he was
They lost
practically
the
looking
second
good.
round.
Yeah, there you go. They practically were looking good because of him. When the piece of shit Bennington was out or was just playing shitty. Yeah, sorry, listeners. I'm not a huge fan of Bennington. He acts like a kid. But
I don't
anyways,
think
yeah.
anyone in this podcast is a big fan of Bennington, so it's okay.
Yeah, like dark horse Ville Husso, a player to watch. Lyra?
I'd say my top 2 is the same as you guys, but I actually have 2 dark horses. First one being is the Islanders goalie Ilya Sorokin. I watched the Islanders play here in Winnipeg last year, and they did not let that Winnipeg Jets goal horn go off that night. And Sorokin, man,
Oh shoot!
I think the Islanders' failures is not because of their goaltending. I think it's because of their offense being drier than the Sahara Desert. So I think Sorokin is a good choice. Unfortunately, I don't think he's gonna win it because the Islanders suck right now. But the other dark horse I had is actually the other Red Wings goalie right now, Alex Nedeljkovic,
Oh shoot!
because I've seen goalies win double Vezinas before, and I think if anyone can do it this year, it'll be the 2 Detroit goalies. Because realistically, like if you look at their careers, they're kind of unproven. So if they want to prove themselves, I think this is the year to do it. And I think Detroit is the right team to do that. Especially when they have a guy like Maurice Sider, helping them keep an eye out on that net area and making sure that they don't get any rebounds and flubbing around all that stuff. So I think dark horse candidates, the 2 Red Wings goalies and Ilya Sorokin. But favorites, definitely Shesterkin and Vasilevsky. You can flip flop those 2 around, and it would still make sense.
Yeah, I think Nedeljkovic is an interesting one because his time in Carolina was really like he really looked like a guy that was going to be a starter right away and make really like be one of the top 3 for sure. And then joining a Detroit team high expectations, but not the outcome you really wanted to see. This Detroit team's totally different. You know,
Yeah.
they added some good pieces like Andrew Kopp. You know, they have some veterans. They have the young guys. Let's see, like Lucas Raymond and Maurice Sider. Like, where are they gonna take this team, right? Dylan Larkin. You know, there's gonna be questions about his leadership and can he bring his team to the playoffs and back to the glory days of the Red Wings. So we'll see. But yeah, I think the Vesna, it's really just between two guys right now. But I do like the Dark
Yeah.
Horse picks. The Calder Trophy. When I'm looking at like rookies this year, I think it's Owen Powers of the Buffalo Sabres.
So?
Yeah, I think he might not have a monster year, but he might have a year like what Moritz Sider had. You know what I mean? And that's good enough in this league to win that trophy, I think.
So he's your top pick then.
I think he's my top pick, Owen Powers. Like it's a pretty safe pick too. Just from what
Yeah.
I've seen in a small sample size, he is NHL ready. And he's a big guy too. Like big in size and shape, so he's probably gonna lay some like hits, but he's gonna be big on that power play for them with Rasmus Dahlin.
I agree. I guess I'll take the next one. My pick for the Calder, and you can call me biased for this. William Eklund for sure. He looked really good. Like I don't think I've ever seen a rookie apart from Cale Makar and Sider look so NHL ready in their first 4 games. I'm a little bit sad that the Sharks sent him back to the SHL last year, but I think it's gonna do wonders for the man. I think that extra time in the SHL, after spending that time in the NHL, is gonna be what pushes him to the edge this year. And he's gonna play the whole season this year, barring any injuries. So I think this is the year that Eklund really shines. I really don't think he deserved to drop all the way to 7th pick. I think the Sharks got a steal the same way the Kraken got a steal this year. So speaking of the Kraken, I think if Shane Wright plays the whole season, he's gonna prove to people that he should have been number 1 this year. But that's only if he plays the whole year. Most of the time, you know, these first year draft picks, they don't really play the whole year unless you
Yeah.
are a Cale Makar type of player. So,
Or Austin
but my
Matthews,
pick,
yeah.
my pick, William Eklund for sure. What are you, JM? Who's your Calder Trophy winner?
Calder Trophy. I'm not really much of a. I don't really watch much of the rookies till they play, but I would say from the news I've been reading, Mason McTavish. That kid was a beast during the juniors.
World
That
Juniors, yeah.
Yeah, he
Dude, that
practically carried the
save that
team.
he made, like to save like the gold medal game. Like wow,
Yeah,
what a player that the
his
Ducks have.
that hand eye was practically crazy. His points was really good. That save was pretty good too. Um, I would say Mason McTavish. Like, well, we shall see till he plays. Like, maybe if he's able to translate that game into the NHL. But I hope he would be able to, because that would be great for the Anaheim Ducks. The East Coast, the Pacific practically needs a good news, especially the LA side, the California teams. I mean,
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's where we're gonna end it off. I think yeah, for the Calder, it's gonna be pretty interesting in terms of what we're gonna see from rookies. I think last year Bunting was a little bit of a surprise that he ended up actually getting the most points out of all rookies. But I mean, you play on a line with Matthews and Marner, and how like anyone's gonna get 70 points on that line. Yeah, we'll end it here. It was a good conversation with you guys. I can't wait for next week and to edit this VOD and put it on YouTube. And for all of you watching on Twitch, thanks for the support, and please, 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 if you're able to share my stream for people who want to watch the VOD. I know it's not the perfect one take that I wanted because I ended up getting a phone call in the middle, but you know, we got to work
Did
with
you?
what we got to work with. Yeah, I did.
Oh, is that why your camera?
Yeah,
for a little
yeah,
bit?
yeah. I kind of had
Okay.
to turn it off. Forgot to
I
put it
thought you
on
just wanted
sleep
to join
mode.
the no camera club.
Maybe next episode. Hey, I gotta keep the camera on, but yeah. Everyone who watched, thank you. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, like the video, share it with anyone in the hockey community or anyone at all. If you know, hockey is all about getting a lot of new people into the sport and liking the sport, and I think it's a wonderful sport. You know, I mean, obviously there's some awful things that we're hearing from the hockey community this year, but you know, I hope that's not like kind of the outlook that people get. I think hockey is it's a very beautiful sport, and the art of the way it's played and the way it's watched by the fans. It's a great game.
Yeah,
But
it should represent the whole game as a whole.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Or
But yeah, you know what?
Closer to it.
Another great podcast, guys. Like I said, thanks to everyone who watched, and we'll see you on the next one.
yeah. See you guys.
See you guys. Have a